Well, what I would say to you is this. Yes, there is a temporal aspect to life. So, for example, if I just take this, this ring, right? As ring, that is temporary. As gold, it's permanent. Is that okay? So in substance, it's permanent, and in form, it is temporary. Now, all of this is form, so it's obviously temporary. It's born, it grows, it matures, decays, and dies. But the real question in philosophy is, behind all this temporality, is there a permanence? Is there an eternality or an absolute? All right? Now, you cannot produce a ring without gold. Is that okay? So at the level of ring and gold, as I said, you cannot get the temporary ring unless you use something permanent. So the possibility is that you cannot get all this temporality unless something permanent underlies it. Now, this is not a proof, because if there were proofs, the existence of God would have been proved an awful long time ago. But these are indications which are worth considering. So, if I say to you, can you tell change? Can you tell that the weather is better today than it was yesterday? Or that you're older, now than you were 10 years ago? And absolutely. Every human being says, yes, I can tell change. So we just park that for one moment, that we can all tell change. So let's say we take this young boy, he's aged 3 or 4, and he's concerned about his height. As far as he's concerned, he's not growing. So he goes to his father and he says, Daddy, 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 am I growing? And the father says, yes, you are. And the little boy says, how do you know I'm growing? And the father says, well, I remember when you were smaller. And the little boy says, well, Mummy says you have a terrible memory. You forget anniversaries and things like that. So how can we rely on your memory? Which is a very wise observation of his father. Anyway, so what the father will do is, practicing remarkable self-restraint, he'll pin the boy up against a door and insert a knife into the door a tiny bit above the boy's head. All right? And he'll mark it. And let's say it's an Irish boy, he'll say, Sean, the 29th of the 11th, 2010, something like that. And then he waits 6 months or a year, and he marks it again. And then he says to the boy, do you see the change? That is the proof that your body is growing. Now, let's say the boy's a little bit naive, and he says to the father, but why didn't you use a tree? Why did you use a door? Why not a tree? The father will explain to him that you have to use something which is unchanging. Is that okay? The tree being changing will not reveal to you the actual change. So in order to determine change, you have to use something that is unchanging. Now, we all determine change. So that, in logic or reason, proves to us that we're all using something that is unchanging. And if we're using something that is unchanging, then it never dies, because death is a change. If the dog hasn't moved for 6 weeks from around the fireplace, you can take it is dead, right? Right? It is an observable fact. It has changed, all right? And if it doesn't change, it's not born, because birth is also a change. So if there is something unchanging in us, it is not born and it doesn't die. And what philosophy encourages and provides methods of is to be able to verify that in experience. And if you do that, if you find the unchanging, then all fear goes, because you'll never face death. The body may die, but you won't. You'll find that you are eternal. So what have you got to worry about in eternality? What's a $30,000 overdraft in eternality? Right? It makes no difference. What's a few gray hairs or a bald head in eternality? It doesn't make any difference at all. So you'll find that an awful lot of the not an awful lot, all the burdens of life fall away when you discover the truth about yourselves. And you can do that. As I said, meditation is the all-time great way of doing it, but there are other methods as well. And that will reveal to you in absolute, irrefutable experience that there is more to you than body, mind, and heart, that there's another aspect to your existence which does not suffer change. The marvelous thing that then happens is, it's not that your attention all goes to the eternality, because you're still an embodied being living on this earth, but now everything falls into its proper perspective. And now you really begin to enjoy this creation, as only somebody who knows they are eternal can. So that's the real key to enjoying this life, to finding out what is the underlying substance behind all this. What great sages have said is that there is an underlying consciousness. And if you'd like, would you like a little experiment now to see if there is? All right. If I ask you, are you conscious? You have to say yes, I'm afraid, because there's no other answer. That you are conscious. All right. Well, let's try something. If I asked you to move your body 6 inches to the left or 6 inches to the right, you can do that. I want you to move the consciousness 6 inches to the left. Try and move the consciousness which is present here now to the left or the right, backwards or forwards. And you can't do it. And the reason why you can't move the consciousness is because it's unmoving. It's ever at rest. Now, we all think we're absolute individuals, don't we? We think I'm here and you're there, etc., etc. Let's find out how many consciousnesses there are in this room. Because if there are 300 people in this room and we are absolutely individual, that means there are 300 consciousnesses. Now, if I put my finger on this lectern, there can be an experience of the lectern. So you are conscious. I want you to experience another consciousness. Remember, there's 300 in the room. You should be able to experience at least one more. And what you'll find is that you cannot experience another consciousness. And the reason you can't experience another consciousness is because there is no other consciousness. There's just the one consciousness. Just as at the physical level, there is one space in which all these bodies take their place. There is one consciousness pervading all beings. And just as with consciousness, or would say with space, you cannot wet it if you pour water in it. You cannot burn it if you put a fire into it. You cannot cut it if you run a knife through space. Well, exactly the same way with consciousness. You cannot wet it, burn it, destroy it, break it into parts, anything. It is one whole, complete, eternal, absolutely satisfied in itself, blissful, wise, and the source of all love. Illnesses which are obviously related to a mental and emotional state. So if you take something like an ulcer, which is the product of stress, then that would seem to prove, or at least indicate, that mind does affect matter. And if it can affect matter, say in the form of your body, why couldn't it affect matter which is not part of your so-called individual body? I think where there is either great power of mind or great love, then you can influence things from afar. Now, this is only at an emotional level, but I've used this example before, but in Ireland, when you're doing your final school exams, it is a public exam, and I remember doing that exam and feeling my mother's heart supporting me as I did the exams. When I looked at the results, I felt she could have done better. But in fact, maybe I would have done worse if she hadn't. So absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is absolutely possible. you know, if you take you take something like the placebo effect in medicine, my understanding from a well-known doctor in Ireland is that if you give, let's say, 100 people who are suffering from a particular illness, and you give 66 of them, let's say, the medicine, and we make it 33, the placebo. 1/3 of people will be cured by the medicine, and 1/3 of the people will be cured by the placebo. It's based on belief. And it's one of the most important things. If you do ever find yourself ill, it's most important to absolutely believe in the doctor and believe in the medicine, because your belief can actually neutralize the chemical properties and its power. So again, maybe if I could tell this story, which might illustrate it. This particular doctor that I referred to, he's a pain specialist in Ireland. He's a consultant anaesthetist, but who's now specialized in chronic pain. And one day, a young man came to him in his very early 20s, and a very naive, simple farmer's son. You know, not overly educated, but an innocent, let's call it sweet-natured young man. And he had gone to many, many doctors and specialists, and he was told that he would now have chronic pain in his back for the rest of his life. But he came to this particular doctor as a last resort. And he said to I'm going to call my friend Fred the doctor, said there was an incredible sort of innocence in his eyes, and he was really looking at me as if he absolutely respected me and totally believed in me. And I asked him, was there ever any relief from the pain? And the young man said, well, years ago I used to play the accordion, and whenever I played the accordion there was no pain. But the pain got so bad at other times I gave up playing the accordion. Now, I'll just divert for a second. In the School of Philosophy, if you're a member of the school for a period of time, people will meditate twice a day for a half an hour, in the morning and the evening. Now, this doctor is a Western doctor, a very scientifically minded man, and he found the following words coming out of his mouth, which he says, I don't know where they came from, and there is no scientific basis to the advice I gave this young man. However, what I said to him was, I want you to take up the accordion again, and I want you to play it for a half an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the evening, and the pain will go. And the young man, being as a very sweet, innocent young man, absolutely accepted these words as true and went off. And his next appointment was to be 3 months later. And a week before the appointment, he rang up the clinic to cancel the appointment because he was completely cured of all pain. So I take that as mind over matter, because there was no scientific basis for the pain to have disappeared at all. But the belief was sufficient to do it. And that's fantastic.